All right, welcome in our Awesemo Fantasy Football Live Before Lock show. Season long, anything and everything you need to know for your rosters, who to come off the bench, dealing with late injuries, a couple of actives, maybe an inactive that'll pop in over the next hour. We have you covered. And we is not just me. Nick Lepre is in the house, and we are excited to bring you everything that you can possibly come up with from a start or sit. I already see the chat is buzzing here. Tyler's in the house producing, so give him a shout in the chat as well. Yahoo is presenting the show today, and we're going to tell you right off the bat a couple of times throughout this program, but right off the bat, as people are already buzzing, so you know the drill, smash that like button, subscribe to the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, odds and DFS channel as well, but take advantage of what's going on today with Yahoo. This thing is breaking the site, so you might as well jump in now. And if you haven't, for first time, Yahoo users, started off right here, the NFL season, Yahoo DFS, use that to jump in and take advantage of what we'll give you, which is 2 free months of Awesemo Plus for signing up and making your first deposit on Yahoo. It's free, this offer, for new Yahoo users only. So if you're already a Yahoo user, sorry, but just follow that link, awesemo.com/Yahoo Fantasy Promo. Again, we'll tell you all about this throughout. This is a big thing happening. We want to make sure you can take advantage of it. But Nick, first and foremost, my man, pleasure to be on with you, brother.
Pleasure to be here. We're going to have a great time today on this wonderful Sunday evening before the games lock. We're going to have a great time answering a bunch of questions.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. And just looking at this from, the season-long perspective versus the DFS where we're crunching away, getting ready for a kick. Just looking at it overall, what are some big or maybe not as notable differences in kind of how you approach the slate today versus on the DFS side?
Well, on the season-long side, I'm typically not looking to be anywhere near as risky in week number one. Kind of in week one, you kind of just want to play the guys you drafted early, right? The start your studs type of idea. Whereas on DFS, obviously, you're looking to get a little bit spicy with who you play. Week one on your regular drafts, I'm just keeping it as safe as possible. Unless, of course, there's like an injury or something like with Saquon Barkley, who we're going to touch on probably in a couple of seconds, where you might want to look the other way than a guy you drafted inside the first round.
All right, so let's look first, because this is going to be something as we get closer to lock here at the top of the hour. Inactives coming down, knowing already where people are for the most part as far as injury is concerned. So I imagine we have a couple of big names that we can approach here. Saquon Barkley, I think, is one of the more difficult to approach today. You mentioned it before the show starts. He is out there, but it looks like a pretty significant snap count.
Yeah, it looks bad. I am pretty nervous to start him unless you are like, maybe other people in here have more confidence than myself. Personally, I don't have that much confidence in Saquon Barkley this week already going against Denver. It was a lot like last year where he started off week one up against the Steelers. He was doing nothing. The only reason why he even had any fantasy points was because of the dump offs coming his way. And I worried now he's up against a tough Denver defense that's healthy, and he's on a reduced snap count. Will he even see 60% of the snaps? I'm not even sure. I said earlier that I think 75% would be on the good end, but I doubt he even gets close to that.
See, how much are you just kind of cornered into, though, with not having that ability to kind of pivot as much on a DFS lineup? How much are you kind of cornered into that? You're really looking at maybe taking advantage of what's happening in San Francisco. If like a Mostert is on your bench, it doesn't seem like it would just be an easy pivot for anybody who drafted Saquon in the first or even second round, depending on how those drafts played out.
Yeah, it's near impossible to pivot unless you went maybe off the rip in your first 4 picks. You picked 3 running backs. Then, of course, it might be easy to pivot. But if you're in a scenario where you went hero running back, say you went with the Saquon Barkley, he's your hero running back, then you're basically just shit out of luck in this case. And you just have to start him this week and hope that he ends up paying off for you, which, again, is in my opinion, a hard feat for him this week.
Did you think like what happened last year? And look, it's always going to be hindsight, the benefit of which we'll have 2020. But last year, coming back, we knew it was going to be a struggle for him just to be out here healthy week one. I wonder how much of a deterrent that should have been, so that, there being plenty of people that are watching that are in this scenario, but hopefully not as big of a pool as maybe before last season, before he actually goes down and misses so much time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were very cautious with Saquon Barkley even before the season. If you were drafting like really early on in August. Saquon Barkley was going in like the second round. People were starting to really panic. And then his ADP kind of started to rise. I saw in a lot of drafts, people take him inside the top 5 because he has that talent. But I think some people right now, if you drafted later, you're probably in the best scenario for success if you have him in week number 1 where you can sit him. But otherwise, you're probably stuck with him in your lineup week 1. And you might just have to hold the loss. Kind of like if you started Zeke in week 1, unless things go your way, you're probably kind of down bad this week.
We have a ton piling in here as far as start sits for you, Nick, to digest. This is going to be a lot. We're going to do our best to get through everything. We're going to get yours as well, some that really jump out at you the most. But let's look at just a couple of other names here. And I'm curious just how you approach Austin Eckler, knowing he's been up and down kind of all week. Looks like everything is all systems go, but it's not like it's an easy matchup either.
Yeah. So with Austin Eckler, this is a matchup that I was kind of circling in on for early on the season. This is a very tough game up against the football team. I think that Austin Eckler, based upon the amount of receptions he can get week in and week out, is still a very reliable player. The issue, though, is the injury. Can you sit him, though? I think he's in a much better scenario than Saquon Barkley, so I'm perfectly fine rolling him out there. But you do have to understand that the upside is certainly limited by the fact that he was banged up all week, not really practicing, which sucks, obviously, but it's very good that he's playing because a lot of people were starting to panic again because Eckler missed some serious time last year with injury. So I think this is a positive sign in general, but not the best matchup overall.
No, and interesting, too, because everything that would jump out as far as the negative that you have to deal with Eckler is still a better option than everything that is piling on with Barkley. So just kind of keep that in mind out there for those watching and following along on the chat as well. Let's look at anybody else. I know we're going to kind of have to wait until Beckham, that later game. So that might be on the back burner. Emmanuel Sanders is in. Nelson Aguilar, another name that we're kind of waiting to hear officially as far as just how much he'll play. Is there anybody else that truly jumps out right now through injury that either is a concern or maybe has had a tag on them all week that you're less concerned about heading into game time?
Emmanuel Sanders was a guy that I was concerned was personally going to be out. Now, he's a guy that I'm not over ambitious to be starting this week, but I do like the matchup a lot. And if he is the true number 2 receiver there in a game that I think is going to be high scoring up against the Steelers, that could be a very solid matchup to put yourself in. The other interesting inactive today was Zach Moss. I didn't think that was going to happen at all. And that really does put Devin Singletary in a solid spot to succeed. But again, how many leagues are people in where Devin Singletary is a guy you want to play as your running back too, especially with Josh Allen there, who's going to steal a lot of touchdowns? But we could actually see Singletary do some things because in the preseason when Moss was out, Singletary actually looked pretty solid.
What about Beckham? And I know that we're waiting, right, as far as like an official word here, but let's assume that through all of this, he's in. He's out. I think it's a little bit easier to point to. You may not have to rely on this passing game at all, and there may be other options on people's bench to go with. But just looking at Beckham, if he's playing, how concerned would you be knowing that he's playing through an injury that's clearly serious enough to be a GTD this late in the week?
I'm very nervous. I was nervous going into draft season on Odell as a whole because I'm gonna be honest, I think that he's still a good player, but I think this system that he's in Cleveland is not the best, right? Because of how run heavy they are. Why wouldn't you run the ball if you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt? So I'm a bit worried about him as a whole. But this week, this would be the best matchup probably for him all year where the Chiefs are going to be able to score. So you're going to have to throw the ball. But now with the injury, I don't know. I'm very nervous about him this week. But if he plays, you're kind of in a spot where you almost have to play him because the matchup is so good.
All right, we're going to hit a couple of start sits here. First, though, what's your biggest one? Like the one that you've seen either people have made a mistake or that you just want to let people know, hey, if you're dealing with this, maybe it was one that you saw generally asked throughout the week that you're in, that on your stream or here on Awesemo that you thought would be worth repopulating here as we get closer to lock. The one that speaks the loudest to you.
Oh, yeah. So definitely would be Raheem Mostert. That's obvious. Raheem Mostert's in the great situation with Sermon. But the real one that I've seen a lot of questions on is Deontay Johnson. I think a lot of people are worried about this matchup up against the Bills to see who draws the good coverage. Who's going to get the 2 better corners on the team? Will it be Claypool? Will it be Johnson? Will it be Juju Smith-Schuster? I personally believe that volume is king in fantasy football. That's something I really chase heavily. I think Deontay Johnson is going to be fed the ball in this game. I think a lot of people are looking for Najee Harris to run the ball a lot. Sure, maybe at the the beginning of the game, but the offensive line there is not very good. So I think Deontay Johnson is in for a big game, and a lot of people are not, at least from what I've seen, not super excited to start Johnson this week.
What about Claypool on that same vein? Because I feel like people are fading even more so.
Yeah, Claypool is a guy that I'm relatively nervous about. Last year, he got so much of his points from scoring touchdowns that if he doesn't find the end zone in this game, I would be nervous. But again, I doubt he would draw the best coverage. I really think Juju would be in there getting some of the better coverage on the team. So I think Claypool will be fine, but I have seen most people are very nervous. He's not ranked inside my top 32 receivers this week, Claypool. So I am somewhat worried.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, especially as you mentioned, touchdown dependent and trying to stay away from that. This is not an easy matchup across the board. Doesn't mean that one corner is going to be locked on one wideout throughout the game. They could easily adjust, right? So then all of a sudden you get a nice little quarter from Claypool, and then he disappears for the rest of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's look at a bunch of people popping in with questions here. And then look, all we ask in return is that you smash away on that thumbs up button. Hit us up with a like. Make sure you're subscribed to the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel and really all what we have here, the Awesemo Odds and Awesemo DFS. And again, just take advantage of what's happening here with our new cool partnership with Yahoo today, bringing you this awesome ability, if you're a first-time Yahoo user, to pop on, use that link that you see right here in the comments or in the show description, awesemo.com/Yahoo Fantasy Promo. And again, new Yahoo users only. So if you're already a Yahoo user, you're not eligible. But if you are not and you're brand new, we'll give you 2 free months of Awesemo Plus Platinum, which is just insane. You can put that to use right away. So let's go back to the top. Kong Lee asks on a flex for you, Nick, James Robinson or Tyler Boyd, pardon me.
James Robinson or Tyler Boyd. I like both of these guys in both their matchups. Boyd up against the Vikings, I believe, is going to be a higher scoring affair. I really like Higgins in that matchup. I do like Boyd a decent amount. Jamar Chase, I'm really worried about. But James Robinson, this is a smash matchup up against the Texans. The Texans defense is atrocious. That has a very low point total, according to Vegas odds. But that may just be because, the Houston Texans just can't score. Maybe Trevor Lawrence runs it up on them. I think James Robinson is basically a must-start candidate this week. The only worry is how involved is Carlos Hyde, because Urban Meyer just seems to have some type of love affection for this guy, where he's going to give him the ball too much. But, at the end of the day, you're still going to start Robinson in a very easy matchup. So I would lean Robinson.
Yeah, first off, I love that total, 45.5 to go under. Jacksonville's defense can easily control that game. And then to your point about Urban Meyer, I saw a report already coming out that he's pissed off like half of the team, allegedly. So this might be a good way to kind of rein him back in, feeding the beast in Robinson and not have to worry with a press conference already after week 1 as far as why you split the carries. But no, I totally agree. And I think just looking at what's open here for Robinson, we just kind of have to go with what we know until Urban Meyer proves otherwise. Bobby Joe Wallace, Russell Gage, or Darrell Henderson on a PPR?
Ooh, that's a good question. I like Gage's matchup against the Eagles, but I think you have to go with Darrell Henderson. I don't like the matchup, though. I'm very worried about going up against the Bears, but at the end of the day, I would still lean Henderson, but I understand why you might say Gage.
Yeah, I mean, look, in this particular head-to-head, I agree. I think Gage is going to have some sneaky value today because of all the attention paid on Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts to a lesser extent. And the Eagles secondary is not fantastic across the board. So there are going to be some holes there. But yeah, specifically to this head-to-head matchup, absolutely. I'll defer to you on that. I just think that there's going to be some really sneaky value for Gage, just overall. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very sneaky value, especially in DFS when you can stack him with Matt Ryan. I really like him a lot this week.
All right, let's keep it moving here. Ted B, Pittman or Sutton as far as a start sit for you?
All right, I honestly don't like Teddy Bridgewater very much. I think they'd be better off with Locke under center, but I don't trust Pittman this week because I don't think Carson Wentz is anywhere near 100%. I'd say it's probably closer to 80, 85%. That timetable to return, he should not be back right now, but they're going to play him. He'll be fine this week. I don't think Pittman's all that good, if I'm being honest with you. So I would definitely start Sutton. But if we see next week, hey, Pittman's the guy, then go ahead and play Pittman next week and for the future. But for now, I would definitely lean Sutton.
Yeah, this is so difficult, right? You're relying on two quarterbacks, one in Bridgewater, who's fantastic if you're putting money on him, but he's not a great DFS or season long. He's just not a great fantasy quarterback because he doesn't take many risks or chances. You also have to deal with whether or not Cortland Sutton, now it's not going to be to the same extent that we talked about with Saquon, Nick, but how much of a pitch count is Cortland Sutton going to be on coming back from injury? How much of is that going to be a concern just overall, not necessarily in this head to head, but just in general? So you're dealing with a couple of different factors there. And then my goodness, I mean, just prayers up to anybody who's dealing with the Colts passing game just because of the volatility of Carson Wentz and having to come back with no preseason and whatever you'd like to call that season last year. This is a really tough spot to be in just from the quarterbacks dictating it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you could also look at the other side of the ball with Kenny Golladay in that exact same game. How trustworthy can you be of Kenny Golladay in a matchup with Daniel Jones as quarterback? Like Daniel Jones, in my opinion, he sucks. So I don't know. I don't really trust Golladay too much this week. Who's also a player that we could have talked about earlier. I got a lot of questions about Golladay this week, unless you are really, really out of options. Kenny Golladay is a guy that I'm definitely looking to bench.
Okay, let's build off of that really quick. We'll get back to a bunch of start sits here. I see they're piling up. Just hit us up with a like. More people piling in here as well. At Notorious FNTSY for Nick on Twitter, at Shanter Show for me. But really, just hit that thumbs up as soon as you walk into the chat and make sure you're subscribed to our Awesemo Fantasy Football Show. And you see right there up top our Yahoo Fantasy promo, 2 free months of Awesemo Plus Platinum with your first Yahoo DFS deposit. So let's build off that point because I think it's interesting. It's not, this is the trickle down effect of it where you're staying away from Kenny Golladay, but it doesn't, there's nobody else there. It's not like, and I'm assuming here, right? It's not like you're pivoting away from Golladay to maximize the touches of Darius Slayton. Like this whole thing is a shit show tonight or today with the Giants.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some people say, oh, Shepard, maybe you can pivot to him. Like, I don't trust Sterling Shepard, if I'm being honest with you. Sure, he's a fine wide receiver, 2 on the team, but he doesn't look like he would be in for some big game. So I'm just staying away from the Giants in this game if you can. It's not like many Giants players were drafted very early. Galladay's ADP jumped down after that injury, after it started to take a while. Saquon's really the only guy that was drafted early on. So just probably stay away from them as a whole. I love the Broncos defense if we're talking defenses here. I don't think, I said this in my live stream, I said this on Twitter, the Giants might not score, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I love that, by the way, as somebody who has taken the under in that game ahead of time. I feel much better with your vote of confidence here, Nick.
For sure.
And as an Eagles fan, I'm not hating it by any means. Who is your squad, by the way?
I'm a fan of the Dolphins. I'm wearing the shirt right now. I've been a fan of the Dolphins ever since I was a kid, but I live in New Jersey, so it's definitely not the normal here.
No. That's not abnormal. You know why, though? Because there are a lot of people from that area, like central North Jersey, southern Connecticut, the entire New York City area that moved down to Miami, right? Like it's that natural progression. So I think, the family, I'm sure you have a Dolphins fan somewhere that raised you as one somewhere, maybe it was just Dan Marino. My dad likes the Jets. So when I was younger, I just picked a team that plays against the Jets twice a year. So yeah. That's what I'm afraid of, man. I've got a 3-month-old son, and I'm just afraid that someday he's going to come home all decked out in Cowboys gear, not because he likes the Cowboys, just because it's going to be an FU to me. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm curious, though. Speaking of your Dolphins here, this was a start sit that we had on another show that I think takes different light now, as you mentioned what's going on in Buffalo. So I'd like to bring this back up, and then we'll get back to the chat here as well. But Myles Gaskin, this is a flex here. Myles Gaskin versus now with the news in Buffalo, Devin Singletary.
Ooh, that's a good one. I personally would lean. The question was Gaskin or Singletary, correct? I don't want to say the wrong thing. Correct. Okay, good. So yeah, I like Gaskin a lot more. As a Dolphins fan, a lot of people started to panic. They started to get a little bit worried about Malcolm Brown, Salvon Ahmed. Come on, there was no real need to be worried, in my opinion, about that. Myles Gaskin is the clear back there. I think this is a low-scoring game between the Dolphins and the Patriots. I think whoever wins this game is going to be the one that's rushing the ball more effectively, and I think Myles Gaskin is going to be able to get it done because I think Tua is going to be able to dump it off a decent amount his way.
Now, I can't ask you personally any starter sit questions for the league that we're in, right? Because I guess I could just mask it like it's somebody else asking.
Yeah, you can probably just
give me any advice.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's get Jaden's question. I love this one here. Chris Carson or Mike Davis at the flex?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would definitely prefer Chris Carson. I think this matchup up against Indy, it's definitely tough, right? But all offseason long, Pete Carroll's banging the drum. He's yelling, hey, we're going to run the ball more. And literally everyone put their earplugs in. No one's listening. They're going to run the ball a lot. It's a great game for Chris Carson. Also a great matchup for Mike Davis up against your Eagles. But yeah, I would go with Chris Carson.
This is another one here where I think the head-to-head speaks one way, like you said, with Chris Carson, but I just don't want, similar with what we talked about with Gage, I don't want to just cloud over. As you mentioned, it's a good matchup. I think if Atlanta's going to stay to their word and throw to Mike Davis this year, he's going to be out there. They can run. The Eagles' run defense is not what it used to be. You can run on them. And also, they're not fantastic at slowing down the running back if there's a talented guy there. This could be a pretty good matchup for Davis, but you're right. I think in this particular head-to-head, you defer to Carson. But just overall for Davis in the matchup, it's a pretty good one. It's just, again, I think with Gage and Davis, you're going to find some sneaky value against that Eagles defense.
Yeah, for sure. And what should be a very back and forth affair, especially with Atlanta. They throw the ball so much every single year. I wouldn't be surprised if they threw it the most in the NFL this year.
All right, Lockett or DJ Moore from David E. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I apologize if not.
All right. Now with Lockett, he's one of those guys, at least last year, he was either he won you your lineup, he won you that week, or he completely screwed you over, right? And there was no in between. It was either 35 points or 4 points. Now with DJ Moore, I believe heavily. I'm one of those people that believes in revenge games. I think Sam Darnold's going to be mad against the Jets. I think Sam Darnold pulverizes the Jets. And I think that DJ Moore is going to have a great game. Robbie Anderson, I also think, is going to have a good game. But yeah, DJ Moore, the only issue with him is he's like Julio Jones. He's just allergic to scoring touchdowns. But at the end of the day, I still think Moore is going to have a very good game.
Look, Bridgewater found a way to move the ball down the field. If that's the case, then Darnold can hear it as well. And I love what you brought up as far as the revenge factor. Matt Rule, everybody down there is fully aware of what Sam Darnold went through. And there's no better way to keep a guy motivated, right, than to say, hey, this is your game, kid. This game plan all week. It's all about you. It's all about you. So Darnold's going to probably want to flex and do shit he wasn't able to do up in New York and just laugh away on that. Same thing, I think, just Carolina as a whole. We know the obvious, right, with McCaffrey. But wide receivers, I think top two at least for Sam Darnold. That's a really interesting play now, especially with that revenge factor that you bring up.
Yeah, I'm all about just hopping on these revenge games. I really do believe that Sam Darnold is going to be very angry in this game. He believes that he should be the guy in New York. He believes that he was the guy. So I don't know. I think this is a perfect matchup for him. And the Jets defense is they dealt with a bunch of injuries they're just bad in general. So even if there was no revenge factor, I think any quarterback receiver combo against the Jets is going to be ideal this season.
I know the revenge just makes it that much sweeter. Exactly. Tyrell Williams or Devontae Parker, CRXSS Productions.
All right. That's a great question. Now, I am a Dolphins fan. Let me tell you, I hate Devontae Parker, but I don't have any confidence in Tyrell Williams. Zero. Zilch. So we're going with Devontae Parker. With Will Fuller out, there's a much better chance that he gets more balls thrown his way. So I'd go with Devontae Parker.
Nathan Beckman with the first defensive question that we have here. Patriots or Bills defense, if you have an angle here to work one of the two? Ooh. It's pretty good to be able to take both of those in a draft.
Yeah, I'd go with the Patriots. I think the Dolphins in this game, I think it's going to be low scoring. The other game, I feel like that might be a very high scoring game with the Bills. So I definitely go with the Patriots. Even without Stephon Gilmore, I still think they'll be just fine.
Yeah. All right. I was trying to get through on K5's question, but there's a lot going on there. So we're going to have to digest that. Again, more people popping in. Good reminder here. Smash away on that thumbs up button. Leave us a like. Make sure you're subscribed to the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, the Awesemo Odds channel, and the DFS channel here. But look, plenty of opportunity in the next 35 minutes here. So to get to all of your questions, start sit questions until Nick's head explodes. That's why he's here. Exactly. Until it physically explodes, right?
For sure. My head's definitely going to explode during this.
All right. A lot of people, by the way, popping in saying just came from Notorious. So not only do we thank them, but we have to thank Nick for bringing you here.
Exactly. Everyone, thank you guys for coming to the live stream. We're having a great time. I was live at 10:45 until now. So we've been going for a while at this point. But yeah, it's been a fun time.
That's awesome, man. And are you doing a lot more individual DFS as far as the season long stuff then?
No, I don't even talk really about DFS on my channel. I kind of just tweet about it, if I'm being honest.
Okay. No, I saw that's what I think why, because I saw between your DFS memes and just general memes, I thought that's why I made the connection.
Yeah.
All right. So let's keep it moving here. Weekly or Grub, Swift. Now we go back to Gaskin here, but we look at Swift or Gaskin. I'm going to hold off on Cooks and just look at those two individually.
All right. So Swift, that is a terrible matchup. The only upside with Swift is that maybe they're down so bad against the 49ers, right? Maybe they are getting smacked up and now they're just dumping the ball off, right? Because Jared Goff's not that great. He just dumps the ball off a bunch of times and you're fine. So I would personally lean, I'd go with Swift, I think, actually. The more I think about it, the more I feel like he's just going to get so many dump offs in this game. But if they're trying to run the ball with him, it is going to be as ineffective as it gets.
So Swift, the play?
I think so, yeah.
Well, I felt like that took a lot to go against your guy Gaskin there.
It did, but I see it. The thing is, I think it's one of those where it's like such a coin flip where it's like, if someone asks me in 20 minutes, I'll probably tell them Gaskin, that's kind of just how it is.
I may slip that in there in 20 minutes just to test you on that.
Yeah. And I'll probably say Gaskin. You're probably going to be
right. All right. Another good one here from the chat. Nick Lentz. Now we already spoke to you about Galladay, but I just want to bring it back up, not only for people who have just popped in on the chat, but also just to kind of reinforce how much of a stay away he and everybody else on that team is outside of Saquon, where you're probably just cornered. But Nick Lentz, Galladay, Corey Davis, or Marvin Jones, full PPR. Not necessarily a great group to choose from, but here we are.
I like Corey Davis the most out of that group. Galladay, again, like I said earlier on, we were just touching upon that. I don't trust him up against Denver. In his first week back, really wasn't really all that much in practice. Corey Davis going up against the Panthers. I like the Panthers defense, like them for fantasy this week. But I do think Corey Davis, we saw the preseason game. Zach Wilson was just force feeding this guy the ball. It was like there was no one else even out there. So I think Corey Davis will be able to get his own, even if it's not a good matchup. And even if I don't believe the Jets are going to be scoring too many points, it's all about just getting the ball. And if he gets thrown the ball enough, then he'll be fine.
Yeah, really just a volume play, right? I mean, what would it take? How much? Let me ask you this: as far as what's the gap that you have, as far as not a specific ranking from a number, but I mean, how wide is the gap that you would even have Marvin Jones versus Corey Davis, knowing that you're playing the two? But how wide is the gap?
It's not that wide, to be honest with you, because I think Marvin Jones is the number one receiver in Jacksonville. The question is, though, do I have the 100% confidence to throw him out there week one and assert that? Because there's a good chance it's Chark. There's a good chance that it's Laviska Shenault. There's also a good chance that James Robinson just runs on them the whole game. But I would say that I think Marvin Jones will be the lead guy there. He was in the offseason. All of the word out of camp was that he was lighting it up. But again, my confidence in that is not as much as it is with the Corey Davis play.
I saw this. Now, there's an interesting element here from a DFS standpoint, but from the season long, I imagine it's going to be more of a slam dunk. Lakers in 4, Goddard or Ertz. And I would add that if you're in a DFS tournament and you're looking for a guy that's under 4K, that may even be looking at like Ertz is going to be involved today. Ertz is definitely going to be involved. Definitely. It's a terrible matchup for him, but Goddard is the number one guy by, I think, a margin here.
Yeah, well, you're the Philly guy. Why is Ertz not getting? Why did he not get traded? Like, what was that all offseason? Oh, he's going to Indy. He's going here. He's going there, and he's just there now. He's still in Philly. I agree though. Goddard is the clear answer there over Ertz.
Well, I think what they tried to do is create a market that really wasn't there, and they just did this with Carson Wentz, where they successfully created a market. They were able to trade Wentz for what could be 2 first-round picks. So I think teams realized that they were trying to do the same thing to a far lesser extent with Zach Ertz, and they just called their bluff and said, all right, don't trade him, just cut him. And now the Eagles, look, they're not stuck with him, though. This is like, like I always make this analogy here, Nick. This is the guy that LeBron is able to get to play for like league minimum, that comes off the bench, that 3 or 4 years ago was an all-star, right? That knows exactly where to be. Ertz knows how to get through, sit down on coverage. He's a former guy that was playing outside of a year ago at, nearly an all-pro level consistently. Yeah. He didn't forget how to play football. But, yeah, Dallas Goedert is going to be the guy that they are working in the game plan way more often. Ertz takes advantage of circumstance. Goddard is the guy that Hurts will be looking for first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Especially, you could tell in the preseason game, the one week where Hurts actually played, because the other week he was like having stomach problems or something, and he threw it right to Goddard like instantly. And I was like, okay, that gives me some confidence, because Goddard's ADP fell significantly. At least in all my drafts, he was going in like the 7th round, early August. He was going in like the 10th round in a lot of drafts. So I was very excited to get him. And yeah, I agree. He's the clear guy there. But it does suck, because if you look at his like splits with Ertz versus without, he was just so good. He could have really been a top 5 tight end this year had Ertz have been gone.
You're right. No, that's a great point. And that's exactly why they didn't pay Ertz and all this thing about the contract. They didn't want to get ahead of it. All right, Steel Pen, 21, quarterback question here. And the caveat is that Steel Pen 21 is starting James Robinson in the backfield. Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson?
Ooh, I'm going Trevor Lawrence. I don't trust Zach Wilson this week. I really believe that again, they're both rookies, that there is the first game jitters with some players. And I think there's a higher chance it happens against the Carolina Panthers defense than it does against, the Texans. It's like playing high school football out there for Trevor Lawrence. He'll be fine.
All right. And I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a bad play overall, though, right? Look, we're not telling you to start him over Lamar Jackson, but just overall, as far as your approach to Trevor Lawrence, where would you say as far as tiers, as far as top tier, like you love him, middle tier, which I imagine will probably be in, or third tier, which is like stay the hell away from this guy as far as humanly possible, like I feel with Wentz?
Probably in the middle. I'm not ultra stay away, but I'm not also 100% in on him.
All right, another one out here, LaVisca, Shark, or Cobb, which is kind of an interesting option, both overall here, as well as just head-to-head with these two. This is at the flex. Pretty
interesting. I mean, Cobb, I want to see what he does, right? With like, how involved is he? Like, because last year, all the debate is, who's going to be the wide receiver 2 in Green Bay? Is it this guy? Is it this guy? And guess what? The answer was neither of them fucking mattered. It was Devontae Adams. So will it matter this year with Cobb? Probably not. So I would go LaVisca. But again, maybe you monitor it. Maybe Rodgers does love Randall Cobb, and he's going to just, like it's 2015 or something, just throw him the ball a million times. You never know.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, man. And as far as building on that, like Shark isn't cooked, but we know that he just kind of, you mentioned Jones earlier as the number 1 wide receiver. I just don't know if there's anything even long-term to expect from Shark, unless this just is a complete flip from expectations. And this dude comes out in the next 2 or 3 games and is catching, 7-8 balls again, which I don't understand would even be possible with not only Shenault, but also this commitment to Jones.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so tough to see, because like in 2019, Shark was a guy that I was so high on. Like, he played so well. Going into 2020, I was so excited. And then he just played terrible. Even Urban Meyer said like in the offseason that Shark was playing small last year and all these things. It's like, how confident is Urban Meyer in him? I don't know. But for the long term, I don't think he's really going to be there unless he plays really good this season. Then I think maybe he just ends up being gone, not even a Jaguar.
Wow, just done at the yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Maybe not done at the end of the year. I don't know how long his contract is, but like by the end of his contract, if he doesn't really show out, then maybe he'll just be gone.
No, and I think that it's going to be something to keep in the back of your mind out there if you're looking at dealing with Shark on a week-to-week basis, to probably see if you can get rid of him now before he goes out and plays and ruins any more of his stock, right?
Yeah, his stock's been falling immensely, and like maybe right now. Maybe you hope you pray today to the fantasy gods, and maybe he plays good today. Then you just fucking ship him off, and you're done with him. You're done with the headache.
That's a hell of a risk right there, right? You're right, because the boom bust of that alone, like Shark comes out and dominates, damn well that's not a long-term solution down there. Maybe it just takes advantage of circumstance, but there's going to be somebody in that league who you can slide this thing over no matter what league you play. And it's like, hey, I got this guy, man. He's pretty damn good right now. But if he comes out and he lays a gigantic fucking goose egg, then nobody, even the dumbest person in your league, isn't going to pick him up.
Yeah, I mean, there's leagues where people are trading fucking Ezekiel Elliott for like a used bag of chips or something, like a half-eaten bag of chips. Like, people overreact in every sense. So yeah, you can do anything really. Like if Shark has a great game, you ship him off maybe, maybe you can get someone amazing. You never know. Like, fantasy football is so funny because everyone on Twitter, everyone on here, right? We're playing with people that are normally pretty solid at fantasy, but a majority of people, they're playing with like the people from their office and stuff. And not every office has fucking Matthew Berry sitting next to them. So it's going to be pretty easy for you to swindle some people.
Chances are that everybody here on the chat that's representing a question is in a league like that where they and maybe one other person are the sharp, and they're taking full advantage of people that do this once a year. Half of the league doesn't check their roster 6 weeks into it, right? All that shit that piles up.
Yeah, that's what fantasy really is.
Exactly. Josh on the chat, Carson or Higgins at the flex, full PPR. Talked a little bit about Carson earlier, but not in relation here with Higgins.
Okay, so the thing is, I have Carson ranked as a top 12 running back on the week. I think Higgins has the potential to be one of the better receivers on the week up against the Vikings. I really am in big favor of this game being a very high point total. I like Higgins a lot because, like we said, I mean, Jamar Chase, it came out yesterday that this guy can't see the football, that he needs the white stripes from the NCAA to be able to see the football, that apparently it's too big, can't see it. Like, are you blind or something? Like, I don't get it. That's like a shitty excuse. But yeah, so I think Higgins is going to eat this game. I think Chase is going to struggle early on. Higgins could be fed. The safer option, though, is definitely Chris Carson. A lot of the time in games like this, it's going to be a real safe option. A lot of people say, oh, Rashad Penny, he's going to get touches. Rashad Penny's terrible. They're talking about DJ Dallas potentially surpassing him on the depth chart. Don't worry about DJ Dallas. Don't worry about Rashad Penny. Carson will be fine. But personally, gun to the head, I'm going with T. Higgins.
All right, so interesting one to follow up on this. Will Morty asking, and the running back question we'll get to, but I wanted to start here just looking at the tight end position. Tonyan or Higbee? Now, Tonyan has some really good TD red zone value here, but I don't know how you look at it matched up with Higbee in this one.
That's a good one. I like Tonyan a lot this week up against New Orleans. Now, this game isn't in New Orleans, obviously, because of what happened there. Hope anyone that lives near there is okay. But this is a matchup in Jacksonville. I think Tonyan, a lot of people say, oh, he's going to regress, right? Because he can't score that many touchdowns. What makes you think that Rodgers can't throw that many touchdowns again? Yeah. Right? It's entirely possible that he scores 11 touchdowns again. In the final 7 games, he scored 6 touchdowns out of the 7 games. The guy's a fucking monster. I believe that he's the better start this week over Higbee, but I do like Higbee a lot now that Everett is gone. He's in Seattle, and I think Stafford is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but still matchup based on this, I would definitely go with Tonyan.
Yeah, I love the point you raise about why regression here. Aaron Rodgers, you talk about revenge game. This is a revenge season, but it's like an internal revenge season, like screwing over your own GM and going out there winning the Super Bowl and the MVP just to spite it to your team before you leave. He's going to be able to throw to other people outside of Devontae Adams, especially in the red zone. And Tonyan has been he's been able to be successful even with a target on him last year, deep down in that territory. So yeah, I think from the matchup that you lay out, especially based off that theory that he's going to regress, which along with you, I don't buy in by any means. I think he's got great value across the board, especially DFS as well. If you wanted to look at just Tonyan across the board here, Kyle Singer on a super chat. Love you guys. Pick one full PPR flex spot. Right. Wanted to support Jonnu Smith, tight end, Chase Claypool, wide receiver, Kareem Hunt, running back.
Okay. Kareem Hunt is one of those players that, in my opinion, when you play him in your lineup, right, he's just the safe pick, right? Because he's never going to really screw you over. He's never going to really take your team down, but he's never going to elevate your team to win the game. So the question is, are you trying to be safe or are you trying to be a little bit more risky? Because Jonnu Smith comes with immense risk. How much do we know that he's going to be the guy over Hunter Henry? This is, I know a lot of people will say, now, I know this guy's a bad guy, but Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski, oh, that's what this is going to be. I don't think that this is what we're going to see there with Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Claypool is risky with the touchdowns that he relied on heavily last season. I would personally go with Hunt. I'll keep it a little bit safer. Normally, I'm all about taking risks, but here, Hunt is just such a safe option. And against the Chiefs, we could really see this game be high scoring and Hunt get a bunch of dump offs thrown his way.
Yeah, you mentioned Claypool and just the concern, especially being so TD dependent. Kareem Hunt isn't going away in the game plan. No matter how well Nick Chubb is doing out there, he's going to be fully integrated. It's not like there's going to be an 80-20 split and you're barely going to get him out there, right?
Yeah, it's crazy though. Last year, Chubb goes down and you're thinking, holy shit, Hunt, he's going to win me my league. And he does the exact same, if not worse, every game. It's like they complement each other perfectly for fantasy success. So it is kind of funny. But yeah, Hunt is very reliable every single week. He's just not one of those guys that's really going to win you your matchup per se, but he's also not going to lose it for you.
All right, let me just flip back. We have a couple more super chats here that we're going to get to immediately. But before that, let me replace, or you know what? Let me add Jonnu Smith to the same 2 tight end tandem that we just talked about with Tanyan and Higbee.
Okay.
Let me add Smith into that now as a trio.
All right. Well, Smith to me is one of the more interesting players because, like I said, I like the situation he's in. I think Mac Jones is going to throw him the ball, but I'm still not 100% sold in that Smith is the guy over Hunter Henry. And I'm not too sure how this is going to work because I want to really, there's a lot of situations this year where I want to see it to believe it. It's like, I don't know. It's like the North Pole with Santa Claus in those Christmas movies. It's like that. You want to see it so you can believe it. And I don't know if I can believe in Jonnu Smith yet, but I am believing in Tanyan and Higbee right out the gate.
I was waiting for what's the Tim Allen movie or the specific reference? Was it the Santa Claus or what's the one with the train?
That's the train one, the Polar Express. Yeah, with the kid on it. Yeah.
I was waiting for that. About. It's like that stupid fucking train movie that you have to see it, Tom Hanks, to believe it.
Yeah, no, that was I watched that one in elementary school a bunch of times. That just shows how old I am.
Yeah, trust me. I'm not going to date myself with any holiday movies by any means. All right, let's keep it moving on the super chat. JT86TN, pick 2 full PPR: Debo, Hunt, Edmonds, and Tyson.
Ooh, Debo, Hunt, Edmonds, and Tyson. Tyson is also one of those players where it's like the Santa Claus thing we were just talking about, where you got to see it to believe it. How involved is he? They're saying Harbaugh's saying, "Oh, he's the guy." Is he the guy? I don't think Le'Veon Bell is any good. But, is he really going to be the guy? I've never even heard of Tyson Williams until this week. Okay? So I'm not 100% sure on him. Edmonds was one of the questions, right? Edmonds?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's in there too.
Yeah. Edmonds. I hate Edmonds on season long, but up against Tennessee, this could be a very high scoring matchup. Lofty brought this up, I think, on yesterday's live stream or on Twitter or something, where he talks about how the Tennessee Titans go over in basically every single game. They score so many points up against the Cardinals. This has to be a high scoring game. I would definitely go with Edmonds. And what were the other options again? I guess
Debo.
I totally brain farted. Debo, 100%. Debo Samuel against the Lions. Everyone's, they're getting all happy about Ayuk. What happens now when Debo is the guy? I think Debo is going to be fed in this game. I think this is going to be a blowout to all degrees. I think Debo Samuel has an excellent game.
Yeah, and we have another super chat here specifically with Ayuk, but I don't even know. This is kind of like, or maybe it feels like the opposite scenario that we talked about with the Giants and their receiving situation and just Daniel Jones. It feels like from matchups alone in this game, everybody's in play, especially with Sermon being out and bumping up Mostert's value, but just from Kittle being the obvious one down to Debo and Ayuk, how could these guys not be in play when you could easily be up 35-7 at the half?
Yeah, 100%. I'm very interested to see what happens with Garoppolo because earlier in the week, I talked about Garoppolo as a guy that I really like to stream at the quarterback position. Not many people drafted Garoppolo, but I'm interested to see if they're up in this game. Does Lance just come in at half? Do they want to see Lance play in a regular season game? Are they going to did you watch any of the 49ers preseason games? They were literally, it was a video game. Garoppolo's out there. Then out of nowhere, Lance is out there. And then they're on the goal line. You're like, oh, now Lance rushes in. Psych, Jimmy Garoppolo over the top like he's Tom Brady. It made no sense. I didn't understand what the hell was happening. But yeah, it's very interesting to see what's going to happen. I'm still in favor of Garoppolo. But what if they're up by 24 at half, 14 at half? Does Lance play? That's very interesting thing, especially for DFS, because I know I've seen a couple of people post lineups with Garoppolo, how that's going to end up going today.
Well, think about it. We don't have any baseline to start with. It could be 14 points. It could be 28 points. We don't know what the magic number is for Shanahan to turn around and say, all right, get the kid in. And that's maddening. You don't want to bet on that alone, not knowing, even having a baseline or a general idea of where to begin, where maybe the coach hints to it and Shanahan says, look, if we're up big, then we want to see what this kid has. But based off of what you just laid out, Nick, I wouldn't be shocked at all if they're up by 20 points and to start the second half, here comes Trey Lance, which would screw a lot of people over rostering Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes, it would screw over people immensely, but it would be interesting. Like, can Lance just become the starter after coming in at half? Like, is that possible? Like, for the season? I don't know.
Well, no, that's another thing too, right? Where the damage was already done. Now, granted, it's Detroit, but just to further your point you're making here, let's assume this happens. Let's assume they're up by 20 against Detroit. It's 20-0. And Trey Lance comes in the second half, finishes the game out, I don't know, 35, 38, 10, final score, what have you. It's not enough, I think, for Trey Lance to win the job, but it's definitely enough for us to now have our heads go round and round about, well, when is this going to happen again? And how frequently is it going to happen again, where Garoppolo does a half's worth of damage and then all of a sudden Trey Lance comes in?
It was kind of like last year with Justin Herbert, how Tyrod Taylor gets doctor malfunctioned on, and then out of nowhere, Herbert comes in. Allegedly, he's been stabbed up. But yeah, so he comes in, Herbert plays fucking amazing. And then Anthony, what's his name? Anthony Lynn, that bozo, he comes out and he's like, oh, it's going to be Tyrod Taylor when he comes back. Everyone knows it's not going to be Tyrod Taylor when he comes back. So, like, I guess this wouldn't be an injury scenario, but if Lance blows up in the second half, like, how could you reasonably, if you're Shanahan, go out there and be like, yeah, the guy we traded up for, we drafted early on in the draft, let's just play Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Like, how are you going to explain that to the locker room? It's the same thing with Fields. How the hell does Matt Nagy not lose the locker room telling you that Andy Dalton's the starter?
Yeah, it's not going to take long. I guarantee you. Guys are going to be looking around after that second interception from Dalton tonight, looking over and being like, did you see that kid play? Because he's not this guy by any means. All right, we have a bunch more start sits to get to. We'll circle back around any late news that may have popped out, especially for later games here. Another reminder, though, if you're popping in, we see the numbers are jumping, so we appreciate you watching. Just hit us up with a like. I want to make sure that ratio is just a little bit better for people watching to the thumbs up, and you're subscribed here to the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. Take full advantage. We told you about this Yahoo offer. We'll tell you once again before we get out of here, but we have some things happening here on site where you can get the Awesemo Plus NFL Express weekly pass for only $1. Use our promo code DAK, D-A-K, just like the quarterback, just like the guy who's back. Dak is back, and our Express Pass is the best way, really the only way, to introduce you to everything the Awesemo Plus NFL site has to offer, and it's more expansive than ever. So we have everything showdown, single game contest. You can take advantage of our free tool today, which is week 1 player rankings, but really this for the Awesemo Plus NFL Express package, $1. Just use our promo code DAK, and it's valid through Monday, September 13th, which happens to be tomorrow. All right, tops only. And this is back to Brandon Ayuk here and Lockett, who we spoke about as well. And you brought up a really good point about just how difficult it is to rely on Tyler Lockett, especially from last year, where you take 3 games away. And that's at least half of the production that you would have, a lot of it, at the very least. Ayuk or Lockett for the flex spot, full PPR, Nick?
Oh, that's a good question. Now, Ayuk, he was dealing with the hamstring injury a lot, but I would still go with him because, like I said, with Lockett, it's either boom or bust. Either he is going to completely win you your game or he is going to screw you over. With Ayuk, he could also win you your game, but he's not going to do the same damage to you, in my opinion. Like, he's going to at least get 10 points. When Lockett has a bad game, he scores 4 points, and you're like, wow. Like, why did I do that? And then the next week you sit him, right? Because you're like, oh, that was bad. Now he has a hard matchup, and then he blows up. So it's like basically impossible to figure out when he's going to have a good game. So you're almost better just playing him every game or just sitting him every game. But Ayuk, I like a lot in this matchup, in this game. I really do believe this is going to be a blowout against the Lions.
Tyrone Ruck. Yeah, and that's another thing too, Rook, before we get to you, Ty, is I don't think people should overthink this, right? With the only thing, and again, just to what got us off on that tangent with the quarterback spot, would be Jimmy Garoppolo. Where do you have Garoppolo ranked kind of coming into this week with everything that you kind of brought up in the backdrop of not knowing what could happen with Trey Lance? But we also have to balance it out with, hey, this is a god-awful football team they're taking on.
Yeah, see, I have him ranked inside of like the top 18, 16 quarterbacks because I could see him being really good, like a top 5 guy on the week. but there's always the chance that he gets pulled. There's always the chance that you might be up by 1 million. You run the ball Mostert 7,000 times and the game's over. I don't know why you do that. Mostert's kind of made of glass, so that would be a stupid idea, but you get what I mean. They might want to do that. So yeah, Garoppolo's a guy that I'm willing to play, but just understand that when you're playing him, the risk is that they sit him, but the upside is that, hey, he beats down the Lions, he throws 4 touchdowns, and he just won your week. Probably the only time you could ever play Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, and in that regard as well, as far as what you're mentioning to winning the week, Tyrone Rucker at running back. We'll get to his flex question in a second here on the Super Chat. We appreciate all of you on the Super Chat. Not necessary, but definitely appreciated here. Saquon or Hunt, Melvin Gordon?
Okay. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams to me are the most confusing players ever because I don't like Javonte Williams. I think Gordon is going to get ran into the ground because it's the final year of his contract, but I'd rather see it before I do it. So I'm not even thinking about him, and I'm not playing Barkley instead of Hunt. I think Hunt is way safer. What happens when Barkley gets when they're saying, hey, he's limited, and they literally give him 5 snaps? Then you're just screwed. So unless you're in a really bad situation, I'm not starting Barkley. So we're going to go with Hunt here pretty easily.
Yeah, and no argument, I don't think. And that's, again, because we talked about Saquon to open up the show. So if you're just popping in here as we're getting closer to lock and you are thinking about where Nick's stance was on Barkley and how aggressive you should either play or fade him, to go with Hunt in kind of a no-brainer scenario, I think speaks volumes for where you see Saquon Barkley today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Saquon Barkley is just as risky as it gets. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he got a lot more carries because, hey, that's how you beat the Broncos, right? By running the ball, by looking good. But you also don't want to hurt this guy again. You don't want to put him out all this time. So your best option is the best option should have been to just sit him in this game, and it would be way less confusing for us. But I'm still going to go ahead and be very cautious with him until we see him play good, or next week, hey, he's 100%, then you throw him in.
Pinoy Pure, we'll get to a couple of props before we get out of here and circle back on anything late coming in from injury and active news. Pinoy Pure, news on Sermon, and we know that. We know he's out. Hasty or Hyde for running back 2 is only option.
Ooh,
their only option.
Or Hyde. I'm going Hyde, personally. I don't know what's going to happen behind Tracer or behind Mostert, so I'd probably lean with Hyde, who I think Urban Meyer, like I said off the rip of this live stream, I think he has some type of a liking to Carlos Hyde to just give him the ball enough to where I think he's going to be perfectly fine in this game.
So there's an interesting, it's almost like a retro question I saw here on the chat. Christian Fox, Pitts or Gronk? Now, clearly one game has been played and Christian Fox has already locked in Pitts as the tight end position. Do you think Christian will be looking at any remorse come Monday morning as far as the decision made?
Of course, you'll have remorse, right? Because Gronk might be the best tight end on the week, but in reality, your decision making was correct. It's just that Gronk just smashed all over the Cowboys. That was an easy matchup for him. Not many people would have seen that coming, though, right? They didn't see that big a game because last year during the regular season, Gronk's basically irrelevant, and then in the playoffs they start using him more. I didn't know how it was going to go. So, yeah, sure, you might regret it, but you probably made the right decision starting Pitts. This is a great matchup against the Eagles in his first ever NFL game.
I'll tell you, I would not be shocked at all if they got close enough to a performance where you weren't burned by it, right? Like maybe a couple of points here, the difference of a couple of grabs, whatever it may be. You're right. Pitts has a really good opportunity to take advantage of a couple of matchups. And speaking of that game, Brett Lewis, Devontae Smith, first time we've talked about him, Hollywood Brown, same with Hollywood, or Galladay at the flex, knowing, of course, that we want absolutely zero to do with anybody on that Giants team.
Yeah, so when it comes to Hollywood Brown, that's just one of those players that also, he just shakes me the wrong way. He's one of those guys where but he's not even like Lockett. He's either 0 or 100, but it's just every couple of games he has that big game. Here up against the Raiders, it is possible. Devontae Smith, this is a smash matchup. It is definitely risky, right? It's his first ever game. He missed time in the offseason. Hurts, I'm not confident in Hurts as a whole as a quarterback, but this is a great game. I'm playing Devontae Smith every time and twice on Sunday here.
Yeah, I think the volume is going to be there for Devontae, and it's going to be maybe not force feeding as that term you used with Wilson and Corey Davis to that extent.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to do a lot to make up for not having more than 10 snaps really out there in the preseason total. and you'll see that. And look, we also know that they're going to be throwing the football. Atlanta's going to throw the football a ton. Jalen Hurts is going to be throwing the football. Devontae Smith is an easy guy to get the ball to quick and fast. So I'm right there with you. There are a couple of others I wanted to sneak in here before we get out of here and hit you with a couple of player props, just props overall. Ryan on the chat, would you start Josh Jacobs or T. Higgins in the flex, Nick? Ryan is already starting Joe Mixon, full PPR.
Okay. In matchups like this, it doesn't affect me who else you're playing. Like, I think Mixon has a fine matchup, just like I believe Higgins has a fine matchup. Josh Jacobs going up against the Ravens. The Ravens are going to try to drip down the clock later on in the game by running the ball. Jacobs has very little receiving upside. Higgins is the clear answer there.
Okay. And we talked about Marvin Jones and Pittman at the flex, each individually, but guys that we brought up kind of earlier in the show, just wanted to bring this back for those who are popping in late. Pow 303, Marvin Jones or Pittman at the flex, half PPR.
Half PPR. Okay. Again, with Pittman, I am not confident at all that he is going to be the clear number one there. I actually like Zach Pascal a decent amount.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be honest. I would definitely play anyone besides, like, you could have told me anyone and would have been the answer over Pittman. So yeah, Marvin Jones.
Noah Pitts on the chat. Javonte Williams or Jalen Waddle, flex half point PPR.
Okay. I don't like I said, I don't like Williams as well, but with Waddle up against the Patriots defense, bit risky. Again, it's really a safety versus like the high risk play, but the high reward is a long bomb to Jalen Waddle, wins you potentially your matchup. Then there's the safety. Javonte Williams probably going to get a couple of dump offs, but how good is he going to do in reality? And I'm more of the risky player. I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle.
And we talked about Tyson Williams as well, and really to a lesser extent Debo, but I love this here with Presley on the chat. Full PPR flex. Robbie Anderson, Debo Samuel. You do have Tyson Williams involved there, but two guys, at least in Anderson and Samuel, who have some pretty big boom potential, downfield potential to kind of choose from.
Can you read that off real quick again? Sorry.
Sure. No, you're good. Robbie Anderson, Debo Samuel, or Tyson Williams.
Okay, I'm going Robbie Anderson again, the revenge game factor. I like Tyson Williams, but I will not tell you with 100% confidence that he is going to really play that great, because I think Le'Veon Bell will still get some work in this matchup.
All right, and last one here, which, again, the quarterbacks didn't do a ton on them outside of what you offered up as far as, on our end. We did get a couple on the chat, but I just wanted to get this last QB one in before we hit some props on the way out. HOCD support, Mayfield or Cousins as your quarterback? I feel like there's been a lot of fading and just hesitation with Cousins.
Yeah, a lot of people are worried about Cousins. I got a lot of questions about Cousins earlier. Cousins is one of my favorite starts this week against the Bengals. Like I've talked about the whole stream. This is just a back and forth affair, in my opinion. Cousins, he loses Irv Smith. Sure, that might kind of reduce the touchdown upside, but Jefferson, he's fine. Thielen is fine. They'll be perfectly fine. Go Cousins in this game. Don't hesitate at all, because, he does have that kind of around his name that he's not that good.
All right. Yeah, it's the narrative. And
the narrative.
Look, I jumped in on that all too well when he was down in Washington, just as an Eagles fan, lapping it up. But the reality is that he's far better than the narrative that surrounds him. All right. Lastly, as we get out of here, just a couple of props to think about. I'll just throw two at you really quick here, Nick, and it's in the same game down here in Atlanta with the Eagles and Falcons. First, you can get Russell Gage, anytime TD scorer, around 230, depending on the book. Odd Shopper, we always tell you where to go for everything. I love Gage to score at some point in this game, especially with all the focus on Ridley and then Pitts to a lesser extent. And then a sneaky one here that you'd have to look for, but it's out there, is Alex Singleton, Eagles linebacker, over 5.5 tackles. Why? Dude, he didn't leave the field in the final 8 games of the season last year. I mean, did not leave the field. Maybe 3 times in 8 games, 3 plays did he sit out. So over 5.5, he's not leaving the field against the Falcons, no matter the situation. Those would be my 2 to throw out.
I love those. I love the Russell Gage one. I didn't even look at any props before this, but I got a good. I'm going to give you a play. Oh, the game's already probably started, but the play here, we're going with the hard over on Cincinnati versus the Minnesota Vikings. Like I said, I think this is a high scoring game. I don't think the total is correct. I think it's going over.
Oh, you've been on that, and I love that play too. You can run on both teams. Both quarterbacks would love to throw. That's a great play there, man. Let me see if I can jump in that real quick as we get out of here. Make sure you're following Nick on Twitter at Notorious FNTSY at Shander Show for me. Thanks to Tyler. Make sure you thank him in the chat for producing. Look, hit us up with a like, that thumbs up button on your way out. We'll be back next week at noon Eastern for another Awesemo Fantasy Football live before lock show. Have a great day. Make sure you take advantage of what we have going on with Yahoo as well, where you're going to get 2 full months of Awesemo plus Platinum just as a first Yahoo DFS deposit. Thanks to everybody out there. Have a great day. Good luck.
Bye-bye.